Welcome back, warrior. We are at the playground today. Check it. And that's our scripture buddy right there. She's coming down the slide. Okay, are you ready? Nice. Good job. That's all right. Oh, sorry. I was trying to kick it towards you. Obviously, that's why I'm not the soccer player, because I can't kick that hard. Okay, so today I'm sad I didn't wake up early on time to get the scriptures read. Ugh, and now I feel like my whole day is compounding on top of me. And we ran payroll for the first time for employees of our new shave ice hot cocoa stand called Snowco. And yeah, it is very exciting. It's actually a late payroll, so I'm kind of sad about that. I didn't realize it was going to be that late. I thought that you could just submit payroll the day before you need to submit it. And then also the other thing was that I thought, well, my business entity and all that stuff got all confused. And anyways, we got it all sorted out. But what's frustrating is they wouldn't call me. We had to go back and forth via email for 3 days. I'm like, just call somebody. It's okay to talk to people over the phone. What? Good job. You did awesome. I did. I got a video of you sliding down. Okay, she wants me to take a picture. Again. Okay, so we went and took a picture. Anyways, so we're going to be reading Alma chapter 1, but also, or Alma chapter 2, but also I did not get my scriptures. So I need to go back to the car to get that. And now it's about time for us to go. Ooh, don't go there. Don't use that slide. I don't know what happened on that one. Something exploded. Okay, so we're back at our normal spot. And we're reading Alma chapter 2. Hold on. It says, Amlici seeks to be king and is rejected by the voice of the people. His followers make him king. The Amlicites make war on the Nephites and are defeated. The Lamanites and Amlicites join forces and are defeated. Alma slays Amlici. Oh man, there's lots of stuff going on right there. And it came to pass, in the commencement of the 5th year of the reign, there began to be contention among the people for a certain man named, being called Amlici, he being a very cunning man, a wise man as to the wisdom of the world, he being after the order of the man that slew Gideon by the sword, who was executed according to the law. Now this Amlici had by his cunning drawn away much people after him, even so much that they began to be very powerful, and they began to endeavor to establish Amlici to be a king over the people. Now this was alarming to the people of the church, and also to all those who had not been drawn away after the persuasions of Amlici, for they knew that according to their law, that such things must be established by the voice of the people. So there are people going against the laws. Therefore, if it were possible that Amlici should gain the voice of the people, he being a wicked man, would deprive them of their rights and privileges of the church. For it was his intent to destroy the church of God. Ugh. Right? People always trying to be haters. Okay, so we have 2 different societies living within the same land, and it is the source of persecution and contention. A man named Amlici then came forth and used this division to his advantage. He was a cunning and wise man, and he saw this as a perfect opportunity to gain power. With so many people leaving the church, the Nehor church grew and became very powerful. And Amlici's positioned himself so that they wanted to make him king, even after all the reasoning and warning from King Mosiah. They wanted the old ways. Nehor wanted to gain and popularity, the old ways. Nehor wanted to gain popularity and riches, but Amlici wanted everything. He wanted all the power. He wanted to be the king. So this is alarming to the people within the church, and also to many outside the church, or those who had not been drawn away after the persuasion of Amlici. They all knew that the voice of the people could change things. So if enough people were drawn away, remember the majority versus the minority, then Amlici would be their king. And Amlici was very cunning and wise, so he was a true threat to their liberty. So wild. Isn't this wild? It feels like a movie. Okay, now I have to go to work. I'll be right back. Oh, but today was my temple day and it was amazing. So, anyways, gotta go. Oh boy, it's crazy. It's crazy how many times I have to come back to this and I can't just go straight. Okay, here we go. So, verse 5. And it came to pass that the people assembled themselves together throughout all the land, every man according to his mind, whether it were for or against Amlici, and separate bodies, having much dispute and wonderful contentions one with another. What does wonderful contentions mean? Okay, and then verse 6. And thus they did assemble themselves together to cast in their voices concerning the matter, and they were laid before the judges. And it came to pass, that the voice of the people came against Amlici, that he was not made king over the people. Okay, so that's good. It seems like the majority of the people were coming together to represent, So verse 7, Amlici's intention was to get rid of the church of God. So if he became king, the people's freedom to worship would be changed. In only 5 years, many Nephites had gone from loving Mosiah because of the freedom and liberty given to them to being persuaded that a man that would exercise this kind of control would be better. Right? That's wild. Verse 5 shows how heated the debates had become and how divided the people were. When the time came, the votes were cast and Amlici was not made king. Elder Robert D. Hales used this scripture to teach this principle. Raise our voices for what is right. He says, quote, as disciples of Jesus Christ, we have a responsibility to work together with like-minded believers to raise our voices for what is right. While members should never claim or even imply that they are speaking for the church, we are all invited in our capacity as citizens to share our personal witness with conviction and love, every man and woman according to his or her own mind. Said the prophet Joseph Smith, I am bold to declare before heaven that I am just as ready to die in defending the rights of the Presbyterian, a Baptist, or a good man of any other denomination as for a Mormon, for the same principle which would trample upon the rights of the Latter-day Saints would trample upon the rights of the Roman Catholics or of any other denomination who may be unpopular and too weak to defend themselves. It is a love of liberty which inspires my soul, civil and religious liberty to the whole of the human race. And then he says, brothers and sisters, we are responsible to safeguard these these sacred freedoms and rights for ourselves and for our posterity. What can you and I do? End quote. Right? That's so good. We gotta stand up for what we believe is right and not be silent just because it's easier. Okay. Verse 8, now this did cause much joy in the hearts of those who were against him. But Amlici did stir up those who were in his favor to anger against those who were not in his favor. And it came to pass that they gathered themselves together and did consecrate Amlici to be their king. Now when Amlici was made king over them, he commanded them that they should take up arms against their brethren. And this he did, that they might subject them to him. Okay, sorry, I need to start my watch. Verse 11. Now the people of Amlici were distinguished by the name of Amlici being called Amlicites, and the remainder were called Nephites, or the people of God. Therefore, the people of the Nephites were aware of the intent of the Amlicites, and therefore they did prepare to meet them. Yea, they did arm themselves with swords and with scimitars and with bows and with arrows and with stones and with slings and with all manner of weapons of war of every kind. So this is an internal war, like between the Amlicites and the Nephites in their own land. This is wild. This would be crazy. And thus they were prepared to meet the Amlicites at the time of their coming. And there were appointed captains and higher captains and chief captains according to their numbers. And it came to pass that Amlici did arm his men with all manner of weapons of war of every kind, and he also appointed rulers and leaders over over his people to lead them to war against their brethren. You know, this is like, what better thing could you be doing with your time and with the community than like raising up war against each other? Like, it just seems so pointless, right? Like, anyway, crazy. Amalek would not accept defeat, so he used his cunning ways to stir up his followers, so they rebelled and made him their king anyway. Once their king, he wanted to take the rest of the kingdom by force. So he commanded his followers to go to war against the rest of the Nephites and force them into the way of life that Amalek wanted. Now the Nephites had an internal or civil war. These verses show the war game involved here. The Nephites knew of Amalek's plan to come against them, so they prepared to meet them on their way into the city. But remember that Amalek is shrewd, and we will see in the next verses that there was more to Amalek's plan. Okay, verse 15 to 20 says, "And it came to pass that the Amalekites came upon the hill Amnihu, which was east of the riverside, and which ran by the land of Zarahemla, and there they began to make war with the Nephites. And now Alma being the chief judge and the governor over the people of Nephi, therefore he went up with his people, yea, with his captains and chief captains, yea, at the head of his armies, against the Amalekites to battle." Okay, hold on. Okay, verse 17. "And they began to slay the Amalekites upon the hill east of Sidon. And the Amalekites did contend with the Nephites with great strength, insomuch that many of the Nephites did fall before the Amalekites. Nevertheless, the Lord did strengthen the hand of the Nephites, that they slew the Amalekites with great slaughter, that they began to flee before them. And it came to pass that the Nephites did pursue the Amalekites all the day, and did slay them with much slaughter, insomuch that there were slain of the Amalekites 12,532 souls." Okay, that's crazy. Can you imagine? Like, so our little city, I can't remember how many people are in our city, but 12,000 people sounds like so many. How did that many people raise up against the Nephites? Anyways, "And there were slain of the Nephites 6,562 souls." And that's just sad too. "And it came to pass that when Alma could pursue the Amalekites no longer, he caused that his people should pitch their tents in the valley of Gideon, and the valley being called after that Gideon, who was slain by the hand of Nehor with the sword. And in the valley the Nephites did pitch their tents for the night." Okay, so outside of the city, near the riverside, which was on the border of the Zarahemla, the Nephites met the Amalekites, and the terrible battle began. So in verse 16, we learn that Alma was the head of the Nephite army. So Alma is the high priest, the chief judge, and the head of the army. Holy smokes. That's a lot of stuff for Alma to be. That is a lot of responsibility. And Amalek must indeed be very bold to go against Alma. Yeah, for real. Also, I'm still floored as to how he has so many peeps. Like, it's hard to get that many peeps. It's hard to get just 12 peeps to follow us on social media, let alone 12,000 peeps to fight for us, you know? It's wild. What were his marketing campaigns? Okay. Let's see here. Verse 21, just kidding. 21 to 25. "And Alma sent spies to follow the remnant of the Amalekites, that he might know of their plans and their plots, whereby he might guard himself against them, that he might preserve his people from being destroyed. Now those whom he had sent out to watch the camp of the Amalekites were called Zeram and Omner and Manti and Limner. These were they who went out with their men to watch the camp of the Amalekites. And it came to pass that on the morrow they returned into the camp of the Nephites in great haste, being greatly astonished and struck with much fear, saying, Behold," so this is the Amalekites, or this is the spies coming back, right? "Behold, we followed the camp of the Amalekites, and to our great astonishment in the land of Minon, just kidding, not Minion, Minon, above the land of Zarahemla, in the course of the land of Nephi, we saw a numerous host of the Lamanites, and behold, the Amalekites have joined them, and they are upon our brethren in the land, that they are fleeing before them with their flocks and their wives and their children towards our city. And except we make haste, they obtain possession of our city, and our fathers and our wives and our children be slain. And it came to pass that the people of Nephi took their tents and departed out of the valley of Gideon towards their city, which was the city of Zarahemla. And behold, as they were okay, so that's a lot of stuff happening right there. So with Alma's army unaware, the Lamanites and Amalekites were now marching towards Zarahemla, all while the Nephite army was at their camp in the wilderness. That could be an easy win for Amalekite, because the Nephite army was literally somewhere else. So, but how did the Lamanites happen to be like camping nearby and they're like giant army? Weird. So it is possible that the Lamanites were lying in wait to join with the Amalekites. And this might be why Amalekite's plan was to fight at the border of the land, to get these Nephites right to the edge where enemies can be waiting undetected on the other side, maybe? Anyways, that's wild. Okay, so verse 26. Okay, so now they're in Zarahemla. Okay, and behold, as they were crossing the riverside, and the Lamanites and the Amalekites, being as numerous as it were as the sands of the sea, came upon them to destroy them. How are the Nephites so big anyway? Nevertheless, the Nephites, being strengthened by the hand of the Lord, having prayed mightily to him that he would deliver them out of the hands of their enemies, therefore the Lord did hear their cries and did strengthen them, and the Lamanites and the Amalekites did fall before them. And it came to pass that Alma fought with Amalekite with the sword face to face, and they did contend mightily one with another. And it came to pass that Alma, being a man of God, being exercised with much faith, cried, saying, O Lord, have mercy and spare my life, that I may be an instrument in thy hands to save and preserve this people. Now when Alma had said these words, he contended again with Amalekite, and he was strengthened insomuch that he slew Amalekite with the sword. And he also contended with the king of the Lamanites. But the king of the Lamanites fled back from before Alma, and sent his guards to contend with him. But Alma with his guards contended with the guards of the king of the Lamanites, until he slew and drove them back. And thus he cleared the ground, or rather the bank, which was on the west of the river Sidon, throwing the bodies of the Lamanites who had been slain into the waters of Sidon, that thereby his people might have room to cross and contend with the Lamanites and the Amalekites on the west side of the river Sidon. And it came to pass that when they had all crossed the river Sidon, that the Lamanites and the Amalekites began to flee before them, notwithstanding they were so numerous that they could not be numbered. That's crazy. And they fled before the Lamanites toward the wilderness, which was west and north, away beyond the borders of the land. And the Nephites did pursue them with their might, and did slay them. Yea, they were met on every hand, and slain and driven, until they were scattered on the west and on the north, until they had reached the wilderness, which was called Hermounts. And it was that part of the wilderness which was infested by wild and ravenous beasts. And it came to pass that many died in the wilderness of their wounds, and were devoured by those beasts, and also the vultures of the air. And their bones have been found, and have been heaped upon the earth. Wow, that is intense. Okay, so during the battle, Alma and Amalekite end up fighting. So Alma, the chief judge, high priest, and head of the army, and he is in the thick of the battle. Verse 29 explains that this was a mighty fight, and Alma called upon God during the battle, and he was strengthened. He slew Amalekite, and also contended with the Lamanite king and the king's guards. Alma wasn't just at a battle fighting, but he found the heart of the battle and went all in. We often speak of Alma the younger as one who repented when the angels come, or as the man who went about teaching the Nephites in Zarahemla, which is coming up in future chapters. But here we see that he was a fearsome warrior who could even chase off the king of the Lamanites. By the way, all of this was happening while the sons of Mosiah were preaching to the Lamanites. To the Lamanites. Can you even believe that right there? Verse 34 shows the reality of war. The battle was happening on both sides of the river, and they must have been able to cross the river at this point, which might have been why the battle was happening at that certain location. It may have been where they were able to cross and attack. War often occurs at advantageous locations like this, but there were so many bodies that they had to move them in order to get to cross to the other side where the battle was going on. Sheesh. When they arrived to the west side, the Lamanites and Amalekites began to flee, possibly because they were learning that Amalek had been killed. So they fled west and north, were scattered until they reached Hermounts, which was a wild wilderness. The Amalekites who were chased there would not have been able to return to Zarahemla to heal, so they perished there. Oh yeah, well of course they couldn't return to Zarahemla because they just tried to fight the Nephites. Ugh. So, what do you learn about Alma in these verses? Oh, he just sounds like an awesome, amazing warrior, you know? And like he just had that courage, like that fire, that courage. And what do you think this battle was like? Intense and the worst, you know? And it's sad because a bunch of people had to die just because people were prideful and wanted like their king. Remember that King Mosiah talked about all the things that would happen if they had a king. And it was happening. Excuse me. And then why did the Nephites need to fight so hard? Well, because they were fighting for their freedom. And they were the ones still staying in Zarahemla. So they didn't want to give up their homes. They weren't the ones that changed their mind about who they wanted to follow. So that makes sense that they would be the ones to keep the land of Zarahemla, right? I mean, why did the other peeps want it anyway? Like, they're the ones who want to change things. They need to leave. If you don't like the way things are, you leave. You know what I mean? If you don't like the rules, you leave. It's kind of like when you're teenagers, right? Don't like the rules of the house. The parents don't leave. That does not make sense. It makes sense for the person who doesn't want to obey the rules to leave, because you don't want to obey the rules. And then and this is the last question, what does this chapter teach you about fighting for our freedoms today? I just think that we need to stand up for our freedoms, and especially when haters are trying to destroy it. So yeah, that makes sense. So, if we are not representing what we need, then how are we gonna succeed in our own lives, like in our government and in our peace and things? Like, how can we keep those things if we don't defend it? So it is our job to stand up for what we believe is right. And if we don't, and we just stand idly by, then we can't expect to keep our freedoms because we're not courageous enough to protect and fight for them. So anyways, very good thoughts. And yeah, my favorite question was, what do you learn about Alma in these verses? Okay, until Alma chapter 3, stay strong, warrior.